What is the higher purpose of World War III? Well, it's actually very, very simple. So simple that most people miss it. And it really can be encapsulated by the verse in the Bible, the meek shall inherit the earth. So essentially, the whole system globally is corrupt. Every single country on earth is corrupt. There are no exceptions. I'm beginning to think that the levels of corruption aren't actually much different. For example, here in New Zealand, there are cabals of pedophiles who operate within government. So there are very high level politicians. This came out in the late 80s and the early 90s. And famous people who rape kids. And they're protected by the New Zealand police and the New Zealand state. And everyone gets told it's a conspiracy theory. And most people will believe it. Most people are dumbed down and don't understand how corrupt this world really is. I mean, but that's global. That's happening. It's happening in pretty much every country on earth. You know, I've put a link in the description box below to a fairly horrific story of a Belgian woman who was sold by her mother as a 6-year-old girl into sex slavery for famous people. Like, you know, people, these would be internationally, including internationally famous people and Belgian politicians. And she was raped something like 5,000 times. And it's crazy because she's in her 50s and she looks great. Like, she looks 5 or 10 years younger than her actual age, a beautiful woman. And yet she's been through the most unimaginable trauma. I mean, she literally describes, she was at satanic ceremonies where she would see the block where other children would be brought in, and it was black with blood from where they'd cut off their heads, and, you know, they'd be like just disgusting stuff. Kids getting raped on stage in front of all these people, these famous European elites doing this creepy music. You know, everyone's high on drugs. All kinds of disgusting sexual stuff, like, you know, kids being forced to eat excrement on, like, with chains around their necks, just pure hell on earth. Well, you know, these people run the world and they're not going anywhere, and they've got a tight grip on power everywhere in every country. And they're narcissists and psychopaths. And the increase in awareness and understanding of narcissism globally isn't an accident right now. This is peaking just as we. There's a quote I like. It's an intuitive download I had from the Holy Spirit. Awareness precedes transformation. It's the same with the World War III dreams. Everyone's getting the dreams because the transformation, the war, the manifestation, you know, the people are having the awareness that God is giving them through the dreams. So we're being warned, but the war is not far behind. And everyone's learning about narcissism and psychopathy and, you know, cluster B personality disorders because they're realizing that demonic, evil people run this world, and they run this planet, but they run every single country on Earth. So the real war is not between different countries. The real war is between the narcissistic psychopaths, and a lot of these people are completely evil and or demonically possessed. You know, there's that quote in the Bible: for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against, you know, something like the powers and principalities and the dark forces of this world. And it's, you know, there's a spiritual element behind what we're seeing in the material. And these people are, you know, Satanists, and you can call it the Illuminati, the New World Order, the Deep State, Freemasons, whatever. At the end of the day, they're all just evil people, and in many cases actively practicing Satanism. And yeah, these people, they rape, murder, torture, and sacrifice small children, and they're completely evil, and they run the entire planet. You know, it's a Babylonian. Yeah, the West is Babylon, and I would say in many ways we're kind of more Babylonian than anyone else right now. But the reality is that the entire planet is Babylon. The entire planet is Babylon to more or less lesser degrees, with some rare exceptions that are bright spots that are godly countries that will And that's why they'll escape the war. So the higher purpose of World War III is that all the demons are going to take each other out. I don't believe... I did follow QAnon for a while in the past, and I learned a lot from it. For me, the biggest thing I got out of QAnon, and I'm not saying I endorse it or I don't, I'm neutral on it. It's something I went through in my past. I did learn a lot of stuff from it that helped me wake up. But for me, the biggest thing QAnon represented was my gateway to Christianity and to a direct relationship with God. And then God began leading me and showing me all this stuff. And, one of the things that QAnon talked about was, we'll have these big events where, all the pedophiles will be revealed and the elites will be taken down by the people. It could happen. Honestly, I doubt it, and I'm not betting on it. Yeah, but in a way it doesn't matter because these evil people are going down. But most likely, as prophesied in the Bible, they're just going to take each other out. So to repeat, the real war isn't between Russia and China and the US and, say Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, India, Afghanistan, Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, Mexico, Colombia, Belarus, about 15 African nations, about 15 Middle Eastern nations. Many others on the Axis side. And then on our side, it'll be the US, most of Western Europe, NATO countries, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, Brazil, quite a few countries in Southeast Asia, and Asia to start off with: South Korea, Japan, Philippines, Taiwan, Malaysia, Indonesia, Israel on our side. The real war ultimately, from a 35,000 foot view, it's the term I like to use. Another person I follow describes it as a satellite view perspective. It's not between the countries. That's the Eckhart Tolle, who's a really good spiritual teacher, who's legit and not the real deal, and very humble and just has a lot of wisdom. He talks about structure versus content. The content here, if we look at it from a kind of systemic structural point of view, the dynamics of the war that's coming is, yes, we have one side of all these countries fighting another side of all these countries, and there'll be all these different battles, and they have all these different weapons. That's the content, right? But the structural dynamic is just so simple. It's just that the evil forces in various countries, the people who run the countries, is just so evil and toxic. Narcissists always go too far. And in the end, they kind of take themselves out. And that's what's going to happen globally. So the narcissists who run our countries, they've got such a grip on power. Okay, so the positive upshot of this, of all this discussion here is this. We don't really need to have a revolution to get rid of these people. They're going to get rid of themselves. But they're going to do it through this war. The sad thing is a lot of kind of innocent people are going to get caught up and die in the process. But basically the primary function from a spiritual point of view, in terms of the reboot of civilization on Earth and the start of a new golden age, is that we need to get rid of all the narcissists and psychopaths and the demons who run this global Babylonian system, so that we get godly, good people in positions of power. But they're not going to step down. And they're so smart and evil, and they've got their systems so locked down, and most people are under such heavy mind control that they turn into secondary psychopaths themselves and just start acting like little crocodiles to these big crocodiles. I mean, that's why a lot of these people are going to die in this war, because they've just kind of rolled over, and it's like, okay, well, I'll just be evil and satanic too, and just, take drugs and be super promiscuous and be hateful and mean and violent and live in sin. They just kind of give up. I mean, a lot of those people, I don't think most of those people will die too. I just don't see there being a massive global uprising and awakening in terms of, everyone, let's rise up and get rid of the elites. That's not happening. but it doesn't need to, because it's kind of already happened anyway on a consciousness level. There are millions, I would say tens of millions globally, probably well over 100 or 200 million, probably hundreds of millions globally, I think. I wouldn't say it's like 500 million. I'd say it's probably at least, yeah, it could be 200 to 400 million people globally, which is around 5% of the global population. I think we're at over 8 billion now. I would say you could probably safely say that 400 million people globally are very well aware of the true nature of the world, and that, if you go watch that video below, this horrific testimony from this beautiful Belgian woman who was, literally sold into slavery in Belgium, the ostensible head of the Western world, and we're so civilized where the EU is based, and yeah, that they all these sick bastards are selling children and raping them, and killing them, because and this is all covered up, and these people are well known, they're politicians, some of them are famous people. Occasionally we'll get hints of what's really going on after they die, like Jimmy Savile in the UK. Oh, he was such a bad person, but oh, they didn't do anything when he was alive. He had all these connections to the English royals. There's tons of pedophilia down here in New Zealand, and that's a whole separate topic. God's given me dreams about that. One of the reasons they allow it is because it massively traumatizes people, and it makes it very easy to control them using mind control, because they can't think straight, because it messes them up mentally so much. That's one of the reasons it's allowed to proliferate, and why pedophiles are given such light sentences here in New Zealand. Another reason is because pedophiles, abusers protect abusers. So criminals and pedophiles run New Zealand and pretty much run the world. Here it's really bad. Like, I think I've talked about this recently, but for example, there was a 15-year-old girl in my city of Wellington who was raped by a famous sports person because he was famous, permanent name suppression, and no jail time. So, I mean, yeah, if you want to come and rape children and teenagers, New Zealand's the place to do it if you're rich. You can come here and just rape as many kids as you want. And the people are so weak and satanic and evil here, they'll do nothing. And that's part of the reason I want to get out of New Zealand. I mean, New Zealand's really, really dark. So the bad news, and then, like, I've seen it, growing up in New Zealand. I've talked about this in the past on my channel. People grow up inherently good. Kids are really sweet and they have their hearts open. I would see my friends shut their hearts down in these brutal, narcissistic, dog eat dog, vertical power structure, social environments where no one treats anyone else as an equal, and everyone bullies, everyone's a beater, and everyone's being beaten, and there's no love, and everyone just mocks and laughs at each other, and bullying is normal. Like, that's normal in New Zealand schools. Like, I remember when I consciously shut my heart down at about 7 years old, because you just can't be an open, loving person. It's just a cruel, brutal place. And I remember seeing friends of mine do it. Literally have a friend who I remember, I got a birthday card from him when I was like 12 years old, and he's talking about feelings, and at a certain point he doesn't talk about feelings anymore, and he became like a secondary narcissist, a secondary psychopath. So it's not just these, these evil people. It's, you have to be quite spiritually strong to survive it, and I get it, like, without God, or unless you're particularly strong, like, a lot of people just can't handle it, and they flip to the dark side. I mean, a lot of those people, they're not in positions of power, but they're on the dark side, and they'll be dying in hundreds of millions, probably billions in this war. But at the end of the day, they made their choice. So, like, the systems of Babylonian systems globally are run by completely evil, satanic, literal Satanists who are super, super hyper evil, and they're masters of dark psychology. They know how to control people's minds, and they know how we think. We're just like puppets to them if we're unaware. If we are aware of their tactics, we're completely immune. That's one of the reasons I learned a lot about mind control and, programming TV quote programming through the media in recent years. I recently watched this horrendous show on TV at this place where I'm house sitting called The Sex Lives of College Girls in the US. And there's a bit where like one of these characters who's an attractive young blonde American girl literally says to another character, "No, that's not what you're supposed to do after you break up. You're supposed to go out and whore yourself out." Literally, they have in this television show from the US, from a liberal part of the US. It's so bad and Babylonian. And these women are so lost and with so little respect. They're literally telling each other, go be a whore. It's like, bro, at least why don't you at least charge for your services? At least prostitutes have the self-respect to charge. You give it away for free. No wonder the Russians are going to be so brutal when they come through the US. It's like raping our, in our countries, raping our women. They're seeing women and men. The men are just as bad. I'm not pointing the finger at the woman, and men being unpaid prostitutes is just as bad. It's like, it's been shown the Russians are going to see us, like the Christian ones, see how evil and depraved we are. It's like, well, you're all just prostitutes and, whores. It's like, well, and giving it to each other for free. Well, we're just going to take it because, that's like, we're just going to take it against your will and just treat you like filth because that's what you're acting like. I'm not condoning this, but it's like the demonic nature of so many people in our society is, when the Russians come, they're just going to be like, you're just subhuman filth. I mean, it's like you give it to each other for free. Well, we're just going to take it and we'll shoot you. I mean, your women are already, or your women are already, and I'm not using this term. They describe themselves as whores. So I would say unpaid prostitutes, and the men are the same, and the men are the same. So your women are unpaid prostitutes who have terrible low standards, who give it up to to tons of men and often very low quality men. It's like, well now we're here. It's like, well, we're just gonna have our way with you, and then probably just shoot a lot of you in the head. I mean, it's not very nice, but that's what happens when you choose the dark side. It's like, so we're not going to get a mass uprising from the majority of the populations globally because the psychopaths in power have just most people are just apathetic. A lot of people are apathetic. Most people are inherently good. Most people are inherently good, but a lot of people, just huge numbers, at least 30%, I think globally, probably a lot more, are kind of secondary psychopaths, secondary narcissists, and a lot are just apathetic enough not to care or do anything or get out of the way. Probably got at least 5% globally, 200 to 400 million people who are very well aware of what's going on. If you're listening, you're probably one of those people. That's like, personally, I don't want to fight for this Babylonian banker system. I don't want to fight for these demons. Like I said, the real war isn't between me and Russians, and not really. It's between the common people, as they call us, and these satanic demons who just predate and parasitize us. And they're a transnational class that work together in all countries. And like I said, the ultimate function of this war is that they're going to take each other out. The mafia leaders are going to kill each other. So from a higher perspective, that's the positive that comes out of the war. And it's going to gut the foundations of global civilization. But that kind of needs to happen anyway because it's so corrupt. It needs to end. And when it's gutted, that will make space for the new systems and new paradigms of this kind of godly golden age of the new earth we're moving into. And then, there's some debate as to whether Jesus Christ will come back literally or figuratively in spirit. But regardless, I have no doubt that one of those things is going to happen, and that we're moving into a much better age. But it's so corrupt. Like, guys, it's just like the stories of the fall of Atlantis, when they just fell into depravity and just depraved acts of pleasure and hedonism, and the gods, this is in the Greek myths, just grew so angry that they destroyed and drowned the entire land in like a night and a day, and it was the entire continent sank beneath the waves. And I actually believe Atlantis existed, and that happened, and that, but not, the gods didn't decree that. Maybe God kind of had some role in it, but yeah, they went corrupt, and they did what we did now, and then it was like, okay, God was like, okay, well, time for a flood, time for another flood. So WW3 is going to be like another flood, and yeah, that's the higher purpose. The demons taking each other out, and the foundations and structure of a Babylonian, corrupt, satanic civilization being destroyed so that we can rebuild from the ground up. Because it's not fixable. Like, it needs to be, the house is so corrupt and rotten, it needs to be mostly burnt down, and then we need to start again. It's kind of how it works. So from a higher perspective, it's not all bad. I wouldn't say it's good. I would say it's more neutral. But if you understand the dynamics, yeah, it's like, personally, unless I'm really guided to by God, I just don't want to get involved. I don't want to kill other people. But what am I fighting for? This Babylonian system? If I'm aware of what's going on and that this is a global game, why would I not just skip it and go to a peaceful country where I can avoid the war and not fight? That's my perspective. I'm not criticizing, demeaning, or minimizing the path of the warrior that many will take, and many people will be called by God to fight for their countries. Okay, I'm not attacking that, but that's my path and my perspective on it. And who knows, maybe God will call me to get involved in the war later on. I don't know. I just sync up my plan with life's plan of God's plan. But these are important things to think about. So funnily enough, it's not all bad. And remember, yeah, it's a global demonic Babylonian system, but what have been clearly shown, Ecuador, Argentina, Chile, after the war, South Africa, that no doubt there will be others. But there will be a small number of countries globally. Yeah, the Babylonian demonic system is there, but enough people are still good and godly. Unlike in New Zealand, like where I mentioned, everyone and even in primary school, you see everyone shutting their hearts down as soon as they get out of their families in the public school system. Anyone who comes from even if you come from a loving family at home, you have to shut your heart down and be a bully and become, because you're getting bullied, so you end up becoming a bully. Like, it's the Babylonian system's here, but it's so brutal that, like, it's very difficult, if not possible, to remain a loving, godly person for many individuals. But there are some countries where they've still got the Babylonian corrupt system, but it's kind of disorganized and not as intense. And partly that's why some of these countries are in South America, because things are a bit more chaotic there sometimes. And that allows, like, especially if it's a Christian country, as Chile and, for the most part, South Africa, Argentina, and Ecuador are, then it allows, yeah, like you've still got the satanic Babylonian system, but it's not as intense. So yeah, and there's bullying in Ecuador, don't get me wrong, in these countries, but if you get over 50% of the population who are virtuous, godly, and good, then that bubble of God's spiritual protection comes up over the entire country. So, and to be clear, those countries will still be affected by natural disasters during the Earth changes period, but they'll be safe from the war. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Like, that 200 to 400 million people globally who are aware of what's going on, I think a lot of them are going to end up making their way by various means and being given the awareness in various ways as to what's coming to these safe zone countries. And then, You just have to ride out the storm. And from a higher perspective, it's honestly neutral. Because yes, it's bad and all these people are going to die and that's terrible. But the system is terrible and it needs to end. And it's not a question of when, but just how. Sorry, it's not a question of how. Sorry, back up again. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when and how. The system will end. The system is going to collapse. And it looks like, yeah, it's going to happen through World War III. So, probably hundreds of millions, if not billions, of people will die. The structures of our civilization globally will collapse. That's the sad part. But the good news is that it's an evil civilization globally that's not going to reform. It's beyond reform. I mean, it can't be fixed. It needs to be torn apart and mostly burned down, just back to the bare bones of it, and then we can rebuild a godly, positive civilization from there. And the demons are going to have killed each other by that point. So that's the good side. So from a very high perspective, 35,000 foot view, it's ultimately neutral. I mean, this has to happen. That like I say, these people are masters of dark psychology, and they've screwed people from so many angles. Here in New Zealand, most people, like so many people, drink, they smoke weed, they jack off to pornography. The average number of sexual partners for women is 20. It's just unpaid prostitution, basically. And the men aren't better. The numbers are lower. It's like for most men, it's 14. But I've met guys who weird energy in New Zealand, like, oh, I've slept with 40 people, I've slept with 50 people, and they're just ignorant as shit. They don't like we're being screwed from so many angles, and then like the media is satanic and it's demoralizing people. The news is really depressing. It deliberately here in New Zealand inculcates like people to be hopeless and despairing and to not even try to resist these politicians. Uh, we have this shell game in politics where it looks like all the politicians are sort of, like basically trying to make the country a better place. But at the end of the day, none of them are very different. They're pretty much all on the same page. It's just a fake game. So, we don't have democracy. We don't really have freedom when you dig into it. It's just satanic elites controlling everything and creating the illusion for most people that that's not the case. And with just endless divide and conquer, like New Zealand's unfixable and they're not going to fix it themselves. So yeah, the war's coming and it's coming for a reason. The meek will inherit the earth. The real battle ultimately isn't between the countries. It's not, content, it's structure. It's between, us normal humans with empathy and psychopathic, demonic, so-called elites, because they think they're above everyone else, who run the world. The good news is they're about to kill each other off in this nuclear firestorm of a planetary conflict that's coming. So it's not all bad. It really isn't. And when you look at, I love New Zealand. I've said this many times. I love the landscape. There are bright spots. The place I'm staying in here is really nice. The town I'm in at the moment. A lot of Wellington's really nice. But most of the country is just too far gone, and it's the same with a lot of the Western world and the entire planet, it's just like, guys, we've got the technology and the intelligence and the know-how and the people. We could have world peace. We could have no hunger, no poverty, no war, no environmental destruction. We've had technologies since the time of Nikola Tesla in the 1890s that could give the entire world free energy. And those are being deliberately suppressed by these evil people. Like, There have been dozens and dozens of free energy technologies that have come out over the last century, but the inventors either get shot, like Stan Myers, who invented a car that ran on water, or these men in black suits will just come up to these inventors and tell them, like I had a friend in Ecuador who ran a hostel, a German guy, and he had a friend in Germany who invented a solar panel that got an 80 to 90% energy uptake. I think most solar panels are only like 5 to 20. And he just had these people from some shadowy, satanic, deep state, New World Order type, I call it the deep state mostly, group. They just came up to him, these guys in black suits, and they said, we're giving you a choice. We'll either we're going to buy your invention for 6 million euros, or we're going to kill you and every single member of your family. And he was like, rubbing his chin. I'll take the money. You got no choice. So, like, that's the crazy thing. Technologies exist that could give us a Star Trek level of quality of life globally. Those technologies have existed for like 50 years. Anti-gravity technology, electrogravitics. I'll put that link to the documentary I posted earlier on this channel. That was developed after World War II. We've already got interstellar travel, but it's happening in like black projects that are, locked up in these cabal type groups, and it's being kept from us. And the real technology, the cutting edge technology, is 50 to 70 years ahead of what the public is getting, and we're just getting. You only need to just look at telecommunications versus energy and propulsion systems. Compare the phones of today, which are tracking devices, and they spy on you, and they also make money off you because then they sell you targeted ads. Okay, so we've got supercomputers in our pockets. Compare the iPhones to the phones in the 50s. Compare the airplanes now and the cars, the ICE, internal combustion engine cars today, to the cars in the 1950s. Basically nothing's changed. Well, that's because oil, gas, and coal, the estimated reserves globally are worth north of something like 500 trillion US dollars, and these evil people will kill to protect that level of wealth and power, and they'll hold all of humanity back. And World War III is going to take these people out. So after World War III, we're going to move into this age of free energy globally, and star travel and abundance. But the crazy thing is that the technologies are there. They've been there for decades in many cases. They haven't been allowed out because we've got demons running the world. And World War III's, the demons are going to take each other out. So it's not all bad. And ultimately, in many ways, that's the higher purpose of this war. The dead wood must be cleared out, and Babylon must fall before we can get this new golden age and move back to a more godly, virtuous state here on earth. And that's how it was always meant to be. Thanks.